Greetings and welcome. This is Dr. V.D. Vaisuri, Associate Professor, Mechanical Engineering Department, Institute of Aeronautical Engineering, Hyderabad. In this session, we will be learning about the definitions and terminologies in centroid, center of gravity, and moment of inertia, which is the third module of the syllabus. Coming to first definition, what is meant by center of gravity? We have discussed that if we consider an object which have many number of particles in it. We have already discussed this while we were undertaking the third module. So all these particles which the body is made of, each and every individual particle will be attracted by the Earth's gravitational pull. So the gravitational force will be vertically downwards for each and every particle. So in this way, for all the particles, if we consider, the gravitational pull will be happening. And if we take the resultant for all these forces acting, if we take the resultant for all the forces acting here, I am drawing the same object. Let us say that resultant is acting somewhere here, as all the forces are the parallel forces acting vertically downwards. So the resultant will also be a vertical force acting downwards, and this resultant would be parallel force to all the forces acting on the particle. So this resultant force, which is acted at a point, is termed as the center of gravity. It is termed as the center of gravity. So that is the point which we are considering. That is the explanation for the center of gravity. If at all we are going to consider a three-dimensional object, any object which is of three-dimensional consideration will have all the particles acting, all the particles that are acted upon by the gravitational pull, all the forces will be acting vertically downwards. And the resultant, where the resultant of all these forces are acting on that body, that point is considered to be center of gravity. So the definition says, center of gravity is a point where the whole weight of the body is assumed to be concentrated. Right? So at that resultant point, the total mass of the body is assumed to be concentrated. So that is the definition or understanding of the center of gravity. Coming to next one, define centroid. Here, the centroid is slightly different from the center of gravity, where centroids will be considered for two-dimensional planes. Whatever shape the plane would be, but the centroid will be considered for two-dimensional objects or two-dimensional planes. So center of gravity is the case where the mass is assumed to be concentrated, wherein the centroid, the area is assumed to be concentrated. Otherwise, the understanding of the point where the resultant is lying remains the same. For example, consider this as a two-dimensional square of two-dimensional thing, two-dimensional object. So this square will also have some of the area, all the area that is occupied by the square, all the area that is occupied by the square. For that area which is occupied by the square, if we consider the resultant or the point where total area is assumed to be concentrated, then it is treated as the centroid. The point where the total area is assumed to be concentrated, it is treated as the centroid. So there is a slight difference between center of gravity and centroid. Center of gravity is considered for mass, that is a three-dimensional object, whereas centroid is considered for a two-dimensional plane. So the definition of the centroid is considered to be, it is a point where the whole area of the plane is assumed to be concentrated. Whereas for center of gravity, it is the point where the total mass of the body or object is assumed to be concentrated. So that is the slight difference between these two. Now coming to the next one, state parallel axis theorem. So in the centroid, center of gravity and moment of inertia module, for identifying the moment of inertia, the parallel axis theorem and perpendicular axis theorem are very much helpful for identification of the moment of inertia of the body with respect to one axis which is other than the considered centroidal axis. So we can identify the moment of inertia of any object with respect to an axis wherever we require the field problem or wherever we consider the field problem, right? So this parallel axis theorem, what is the statement of this parallel axis theorem? Let us see here. The statement says, parallel axis theorem states that the moment of inertia of a plane area with respect to any reference axis in its plane is equal to the sum of moment of inertia with respect to a parallel centroidal axis and product of the total area and the square of the distance between the two axes, right? So this is the statement. We can write this statement in formula form where the moment of inertia, let us say Ix, where we need to find the moment of inertia of the object with respect to some x-axis, it is identified as the moment of inertia of the same object at the centroidal axis, right? So we need, for example, there is an object and we need to find the moment of inertia of this object with respect to some axis which is lying away. Let us say this is the x-axis axis, and we need to identify the moment of inertia of this object with respect to this x-axis axis. Then we will be using this parallel axis theorem for identification of that moment of inertia. We all know at the centroid there will be moment of inertia acted upon. That is treated as Ig. The moment of inertia of this object with respect to the centroid, it is treated as the Ig. And then the area of the total shape. We consider the area of the total shape, and let us take the distance between the centroidal axis and the reference axis, that is x-axis axis, is h. So this is the consideration. In this way, the parallel axis theorem states that the moment of inertia of the object with respect to the required axis, that is x-axis axis, is equal to the centroidal moment of inertia with respect to the centroidal axis plus the area of the object, that is selected, given, and the distance square of the reference axis and the centroidal axis. So that is h. This is the distance between the reference axis and the centroidal axis. So in this way, the parallel axis theorem statement is given. So now we can clearly understand that any object's moment of inertia with respect to any axis can be known. With respect to any axis can be known if we know the moment of inertia of the object with respect to the centroidal axis and the distance of this reference axis with respect to the centroidal axis. So this is the way how we are going to identify the moment of inertia of any object. Okay. So in this way, we can state the moment of inertia of any object, and the statement for parallel axis theorem can be given. So the statements of this parallel axis theorem is moment of inertia of a plane area with respect to any reference axis in its plane is equal to the sum of moment of inertia with respect to a parallel centroidal axis and product of the total area and the square of the distance between the two axes. Okay. So the centroidal axis which we are going to be considering for the given object should be parallel to the reference axis. That means the axis which we are going to identify the moment of inertia is. So that you should remember. Now coming to the next one. Here you can see the formula that is to be given for the parallel axis theorem. That is IAB is equal to IG plus AH square. So IAB is the moment of inertia about the axis AB. That means in the example previously that we have considered the reference axis, that is XX axis. Here in the formula it is given as IAB, nothing but AB is the reference axis to which we need to identify the moment of inertia of the object. Then IG is the moment of inertia about centroidal axis, and that is the axis passing through the centroid. Centroidal axis is nothing but for a given object, whether it may be 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional, there will be center of the object. So the axis which passes through the center of the object is treated as the centroidal axis. So that is going to be represented with the term IG. So IG is the moment of inertia about centroidal axis passing through center. Then A is the area of the given figure. So whatever 2-dimensional object that is being given, the total area we need to consider. Whether it may be a composite section, whether it may be a regular section, we need to first identify the area of the total figure. If at all composite figure is given, then we will be dividing that composite figure into known number of parts, that is areas. The known areas will be divided, and the procedure is utilized for identifying the moment of inertia with respect to the reference axis. And next one is the H, that is the distance between centroidal axis and the given axis. Distance between the centroidal axis and the given axis. So overall, the statement can be given in the formula form as IAB is equal to IG plus AH square. That is the parallel axis theorem. Coming to next one, state perpendicular axis theorem. So this is also the one of the important and one of the very useful theorem for which we can identify the moment of inertia of any plane or of any object with respect to some perpendicular axis. That is, the axis is perpendicular to the plane of the object. perpendicular to the plane of the object. For understanding this, let us take an example that you are placing a stick. Let us say there is one stick and you are placing that stick perpendicular to the wall. You are placing a stick perpendicular to the wall. So this stick, which is perpendicular to the wall, is acted as the perpendicular axis for the two-dimensional plane of the wall. So that is for simple understanding, right? So a stick which is placed perpendicular to the wall. Wall is the two-dimensional plane that we are going to consider, and the stick which is perpendicular to the wall, that stick is the perpendicular axis. Now we can identify the moment of inertia of such kind of perpendicular axis with respect to any given axis which are along the plane of the object. That means the parallel or the perpendicular, mutually perpendicular axis, whatever number of the axes that are present in the wall, in the two-dimensional plane itself, the only single perpendicular axis, that is a stick which is being placed. Just imagining that. So we can identify the moment of inertia of that particular plane or object with respect to this perpendicular axis. So the statement is given as perpendicular axis theorem states that the moment of inertia of an area with respect to an axis perpendicular to that xy plane and passing through the origin will be equal to the sum of moment of inertia of the same area about xx and yy axis. So for understanding this, just see the figure here. In this figure, you can understand this is the area that is being given, or this is the object that is being given, and we are considering three axes here. Observe, this is the x-axis, this is the y-axis. So these two are the mutually perpendicular axes which are along the plane of this object. Which are along the plane of this object. That means whatever plane the object is lying in, x and y axis are along this plane. And the axis z which is being considered here, that axis is perpendicular to this plane, and passing through the intersection of the two axes. That is x and y, which are lying in the object's plane. Okay. So that means this z-axis is perpendicular to x and y both. It is perpendicular to x and y axis both. Right. So then the statement says that Izz, which is the moment of inertia of this particular object with respect to zz axis, is equal to sum of the moment of inertia of this same object with respect to x-axis and y-axis. So that is the representation. Izz is equal to Ixx plus Iyy. So that would be your perpendicular axis theorem statement. Okay, so very simple, but it is very helpful for solving the many number of problems where we need to identify the moment of inertia of the given object with respect to some perpendicular to plane axis. Right. So with this, we can understand that the moment of inertia can be identified for any orientation. Of the object and with respect to any required axis. So the statement says here, perpendicular axis theorem states that the moment of inertia of an area with respect to an axis perpendicular to that xy plane and passing through the origin. will be equal to the sum of moment of inertia of the same area about xx and yy axis. So the representation is given as Izz is equal to Ixx plus Iy. This is perpendicular axis theorem. So both parallel axis theorem and perpendicular axis theorem are very useful for identifying the moment of inertia of the given object with respect to any required axis. With respect to any required axis. Coming to next one, what is radius of gyration? So the basic understanding of this term, radius of gyration, as the term itself represents that it is a distance or it is the length which we are going to consider. So the definition of this radius of gyration is given as radius of gyration is defined as the distance from the axis of rotation to a point where the total mass of the body is supposed to be concentrated. So for understanding, you can see here total mass. Total mass of the body is supposed to be concentrated. So can you recollect what is this wording means? Nothing but it is a center of gravity. It is the center of gravity. So the statement or the definition given is distance from the axis of rotation. So that means the required axis. We can say that axis is the required axis to a point where the total mass of the body is to be concentrated. So here we can consider that as the centroid. So the distance from the required reference axis to the centroid of that given object. The distance between the reference axis to the centroid of that given object. So for understanding, again we can see, let us consider this object and let us say this is the centroid. This is the centroid and the reference axis is somewhere here. Let us take that as xx axis. So the radius of gyration is treated as the distance of this reference axis from the centroid of that area. So that distance would be this one. So as per our parallel axis theorem, which we have just now seen, as per our parallel axis theorem, the distance representation for this particular thing, which is similar to that parallel axis theorem, it is given as h. Isn't it? It is given as h. That is for parallel axis theorem that we have considered. Same way, this is the similar thing, but the radius of gyration is going to be considered for exactly the centroid. The distance from the centroid to the reference axis, axis of rotation. That is the axis to which the object is being rotated. Okay, so that is the axis of rotation. That the moment of inertia about the axis may remain the same. So the definition of this radius of gyration is given as radius of gyration is defined as the distance from the axis of rotation to a point where the total mass of the body is supposed to be concentrated. So that the moment of inertia about the axis may remain the same. So the representation is given as k is equal to under root IA square. So for understanding that, we know that moment of inertia I is equal to area into distance square, isn't it? Area into distance square. So let us take that distance as k and area of the given object is A and the moment of inertia of that particular body with having an area A is I. So this can be written again as I by A is equal to k square. This implies the k is equal to under root I by A. So this is the representation of the radius of gyration. Representation of radius of gyration. So this is the statement which can be considered or the definition of the radius of gyration. Here the definition itself, it is given as radius of gyration is defined as the distance from the axis of rotation to a point where the total mass of the body is supposed to be concentrated, so that the moment of inertia about the axis may remain the same. And the formula for this radius of gyration can be treated as k is equal to under root I by a, where k is the radius of gyration, I is the moment of inertia, and a is the area of the object, given object, right? So coming to next one, define the term moment of inertia. So the actual definition of moment of inertia, it is defined as it is the product of area and the square of its moment arm about a reference axis is called moment of inertia, right? So understanding this, we know that moment of inertia I is equal to area into distance square, isn't it? Area into distance square. That is, moment of inertia is equal to product of area and square of the distance. So this distance is nothing but it is the distance between the considered reference axis and the centroid, or the other point which we are going to take, or the force which is being acted upon, the force which is being acted upon. So that distance we are going to consider. So one is the reference axis and other is the force or else centroid or else any the applied application of the object that we are going to consider. And this is called as the moment arm. This is called as the moment arm. In identification or in the understanding of the moment of a force, we have considered the force that is going to be applied and the distance from the moment center to that force, the perpendicular distance is the moment arm, right? So this is also the same thing. It is the moment arm. So the moment of inertia is defined as the product of area and the square of the momentum, distance square. For simple remembrance of the moment of inertia formula, it is very easy to remember that as moment of inertia is equal to area into distance square, wherein area is the area of the given object and distance square, distance is the distance between the reference axis and the whether the centroid or the force that is being applied, whatever it is. So that is the moment of inertia. So the definition of moment of inertia is it is the product of area and the square of its moment arm about a reference axis is called moment of inertia. Coming to next one, define mass moment of inertia. So it is similar to the area moment of inertia. The definition is given as the product of mass and the square of its moment arm. So the definition remains the same, wherein the moment of inertia or second moment of area, we can call the moment of inertia is second moment of area, where the moment of inertia is simply considered to the two-dimensional objects. Moment of inertia is simply considered to the two-dimensional objects, wherein mass moment of inertia will be considered for three-dimensional objects. So here the product, the definition is given for mass moment of inertia as the product of mass and the square of its moment arm. Square of its moment arm about a reference axis is called mass moment of inertia. Right? So the moment of inertia general term, it is considered for two-dimensional object, wherein the definition is given for product of area into moment arm square. Here for mass moment of inertia, it is the mass into moment arm square. Same thing. Moment of inertia, mass moment of inertia we can consider. It is for mass into distance square. mass into distance square. So whenever we consider the mass moment of inertia, we will be having the mass of the object and then the distance between the reference axis to the centroid or else the force that is being applied, anything. So that is the definition of mass moment of inertia. It is given as the product of mass and the square of its moment arm about a reference axis is called mass moment of inertia. Coming to next one, state Pappus and Guldinus theorem for area. So this is a very useful theorem which is stated by Pappus and Guldinus. These are related to the formation of the area because of the revolution of any point or any line. If at all some line is being revolved against a central axis, then some volume will be forming. And when a point is rotated or revolved against with some central axis, then some area will be forming. Some line will be forming, some curve will be forming, or a plane. If a plane is being rotated, then some volume will be forming. Right? So all these relations, two theorems are being stated by this Pappus and Guldinus. We do have got two theorems of Pappus and Guldinus related to area as well as the volume. So first let us understand this. State Pappus and Guldinus theorem for area. So the statement is given like this. The area of surface generated by revolving a plane curve about non-intersecting axis. Let us say this is the axis, or else let us take it as YY axis, and this YY axis there is a curve. There is a curve of certain length. Let us take that as AB. If this curve is rotated or revolved towards 360 degrees, what will happen? A cylinder will form or a curved shape will form. This would be your area. There is no material here. This will be your area that is being formed because of this curve. This is for 360 degrees. You may rotate this curve to a certain distance, no problem. But the rotation should be with respect to non-intersecting axis. So whatever rotation or revolution that is being made for this object, for this curve, it should not intersect with the axis. So then, if you do such a way, then what happens? According to Pappus and Guldinus, the area of surface generated by revolving a plane curve about non-intersecting axis in the plane of the curve is equal to the length of the generating curve. This is the length which we are considering, that is AB, isn't it? So let us take the length is L. It is equal to the length of the generating curve times the distance travelled by the centroid of the curve in the revolution and angle of rotation. So whatever distance this curve is rotating or moving, the centroid of this curve would be somewhere here, isn't it? So that centroid's travelling distance we are going to consider. Then it would be the product of that curve, generating curve times is nothing but the product of that thing. Okay, so the Pappus and Guldinus theorem for area is given like this. The area of surface generated by revolving a plane curve about non-intersecting axis in the plane of the curve is equal to the length of the generating curve times the distance travelled by the centroid of the curve in the revolution and angle of rotation. So this is about the Pappus and Guldinus theorem for area. Coming to next one, Pappus and Guldinus theorem for volume. So there is a slight difference. In the previous thing, it is related to the area, and now it is related to the volume. So the statement is given like this. The volume of a solid generated by revolving a plane area. Previously, we have generated only a curve. Let us say that is y5. We have taken only a curve. Even it may be a straight line also. Don't get confused with that. It should only be a curve sort of a thing. It may be a straight line also. If we rotate this straight line or a curve, a linear thing to some certain angle, then some area will be forming. If at all we rotate or make a movement of this two-dimensional thing or area, we can say this is area. This area is being rotated along with respect to the axis, central axis. Then what happens? This total area will be moved on with respect to this axis, and some volume will be formed, isn't it? Some volume will be formed. So that volume we are going to consider. That volume we are going to consider. So this theorem is about this volume that is being created because of the revolution of the two-dimensional area. So the statement is given like this. The volume of a solid generated by revolving a plane area about a non-intersecting axis in the plane is equal to the area of the generating plane times the distance travelled by the centroid of the plane area and its rotation. So this is the Pappus and Guldinus theorem for volume. Coming to next one, explain polar moment of inertia. So the moment of inertia with respect to the perpendicular axis which we have considered previously. In the perpendicular axis theorem, we have taken an example for, we have imagined a stick that is being projected or that is being placed against a wall. So here also let us consider the same example. The statement or the polar moment of inertia definition is given here as moment of inertia about an axis perpendicular to the plane of an area is known as polar moment of inertia. So whatever IZZ value that you have been identified with respect to the perpendicular axis in the perpendicular axis theorem, IZZ that you have identified, it can be treated as the polar moment of inertia. So you can consider once again, there was an object placed here and we have taken, this is the x-axis, this is the y-axis and this is the z-axis, and this object is lying in xy plane. This object is lying in xy plane. If at all an axis, z-axis, which is perpendicular to both this x-axis and y-axis, it is being considered, the moment of inertia with respect to this perpendicular axis, which is IZZ, is called as the polar moment of inertia. And what was the equation that we have obtained? That polar moment of inertia equation is obtained as Ixx plus Iyy. This is the formula for polar moment of inertia. It is very useful. Again, the perpendicular axis theorem, whatever you have considered, we can observe there for understanding this polar moment of inertia. So the statement is given as moment of inertia about an axis perpendicular to the plane of an area is known as polar moment of inertia. Coming to next one, what is a composite section? It is very easy to understand that a 2D plane, a two-dimensional plane lamina having two or more regular shapes included in a single shape. is called as the composite section. We all know this is a square and this is a rectangle and this is a triangle. So if at all these individual shapes which we are considering, these are the regular shapes, and these are regular non-complicated shapes. If all these all or some of the shapes are combined together, that means this rectangle is being placed on this square, rectangle is placed on this square, and a triangle is being placed on this rectangle, and this total object is given, then it is treated as the composite sections. And while identifying the moment, even the moment of inertia, even the centroid, then what we are going to do, we are going to take the individual shapes, the regular shapes, which are regular shapes, and then we will evaluate the required data, right? So this is treated as the composite section. So as per the statement that is given, two-dimensional plane lamina. A two-dimensional plane lamina having two or more regular shapes included in a single shape. It is treated as the composite section. Coming to next one. What is a composite body? Again, this is a similar thing. A three-dimensional object having two or more regular shaped bodies included into a single shape. It is treated as the composite body. That means we do have a regular body of a cone, isn't it? And let us say a cube or cuboid. So these are the regular shaped objects. If at all that cone is being placed on this cube or cuboid, then what happens? This will become a composite shape. Individually, these are two regular bodies, and we do have the all the required formulae and the answers to the these regular shapes or regular bodies. If both the shapes or both the bodies are given in a combined form, then this is called as the composite body. And again, for evaluation purpose, we will be dividing these into the different regular shaped bodies, and then we will apply the formula for obtaining the end result. Right? So according to the statement that is given, a three-dimensional object having two or more regular shaped bodies included into a single shape is called as the composite body. Coming to next one. Define the term product of inertia. So the definition is given like this. The product of inertia of area, that is dA, if we are considering a small area dA, is defined as dIxy, which is the moment of inertia of that xy plane with respect to the xy plane, both combinedly considering. Previously what we have done, an object is being selected and only one axis we are considering, and we have identified the moment of inertia of that particular object in the form of Ixx. If we need to identify the moment of inertia with respect to both axes at a time, then what we need to do? We need to identify the moment of inertia with respect to both axes, which are x and y at a time. So this is possible where we do have the formula for moment of inertia as area into distance square. So generally what we had, the moment of inertia is equal to area into distance square, isn't it? So here also, when we considering the product of inertia, we are going to consider the moment of inertia with respect to both the axes at a time. So here we can write it as the moment of inertia with respect to x and y axis, which is the product we are going to consider, and the area of that particular object into distance square. Now here the distance square is being treated if we consider the x-axis alone or y-axis alone. Now what we are considering? We are considering both x and y-axis at a time. So we need to take the distance of this object with respect to x-axis as well as the y-axis. So we can write here the x and y. So ultimately the moment of inertia formula is satisfied. So here we are going to take the product of inertia as Ixy, which is treated as area into distance square, that is distance into distance. Okay, so this is how we are going to take the product of inertia. If you consider the product of inertia, we again can take with the help of this product of inertia, we can identify the moment of inertia with respect to two axes at a time. So the product of inertia of area is defined as dIxy is equal to x into y into dA, that is area into distance square, distance into distance. So if we integrate that product of inertia for entire area, or if we consider the total area, then we can integrate that. So we will be obtaining Ixy is equal to integral of xy into dA. Coming to next one, what is transfer formula? The parallel axis theorem for product of inertia is similar to the parallel axis theorem for moment of inertia and is expressed as Ixy is equal to Igx dash y dash plus A hx y hy. So what was the parallel axis theorem? Ixx, what we have considered, is equal to Ig, which if we take x plus A into h square, that is the regular parallel axis theorem. Now if we consider the both axes at a time, that is x into y, then what we can take the centroidal axis moment of inertia with respect to both x and y axis plus A, that is area of the object given, and the h of the distance of the centroid with respect to the reference axis, that is x axis, and the distance of that particular centroid or the centroidal axis with respect to the reference axis, that is y axis. So this would be your parallel axis theorem for product of inertia. Now the question, what is the transfer formula? For understanding this relation is called as the transfer formula for product of inertia. Nothing much changed from the product of inertia to the normal moment of inertia. Product of inertia transfer formula would be the transferring of the parallel axis theorem to the two axes, that is x axis and y axis, both combinedly considered at a time. Coming to next one, what are the units of mass moment of inertia? So the unit of mass moment of inertia, as we have considered, mass into distance square, right? So mass units would be kg and distance square, that is distance is the meters. So the unit of mass moment of inertia would be kg meter square. So this is the session about the definitions and terminologies in centroid, center of gravity and moment of inertia. This concludes the session. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.